In June of last year, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky attended the D-Day celebrations of World War II. There, he met European leaders, U.S. President Joe Biden, and most notably, some surviving D-Day soldiers. It was a deeply emotional moment for him, not only because he was attending the commemoration, but also for another significant reason. Zelensky was preparing for a decisive D-Day-like attack on Russia with European and American support. In this context, France was tasked with training Ukraine's elite 155th Brigade from scratch. France was to bear all the expenses for training and equipping the Ukrainian brigade. Ukraine and its European allies were so committed that France spent $930 million to prepare the 155th Mechanized Brigade. Within NATO, this brigade was referred to as the crown jewel of the Ukrainian army. France trained this mechanized brigade to NATO standards, equipping it with Leopard II tanks and VAB armored vehicles. Notably, the VAB vehicles provided were made of metal 1.5 to 2 inches thick, making them resistant to mines and rockets. These vehicles could travel at speeds of 80 kilometers per hour across icy marshlands. The rest of the brigade's equipment was also highly advanced. A special mobilization took place in Ukraine, during which nearly 4,000 soldiers were recruited. Ukrainian law was amended for the 155th Brigade, lowering the recruitment age. Young adults in their 20s, prisoners, and individuals with minimal education were also enlisted. The unit's insignia featured a scorpion, prominently displayed on their shoulders. This brigade was specifically designed to break through Russian defense lines on the southern front. Ukraine and France named the brigade Anne of Kiev, after the 11th century French queen. Queen Anne was originally the Queen of Kievan Rus, in what is now Ukraine. However, she also became Queen of the Franks when she married King Henry I of France. The name Anne of Kiev has historically symbolized the strong ties between Ukraine and France. She is highly revered in Ukraine, and her image is even engraved on coins. In recognition of this historical connection, both countries nicknamed the 155th Mechanized Brigade Anne of Kiev. Ukraine initially planned to recruit 5,800 young men and send them to France for training as part of the Anne of Kiev Brigade. However, after months of effort, fewer than 4,000 recruits were gathered. The brigade consisted of a mix of trained and mostly untrained soldiers. In October, their advanced training began in France. As training progressed, French instructors noticed that the number of Ukrainian recruits was gradually decreasing. Every week, some trainees would leave for a walk and never return. By the end of training in November, 1,700 soldiers, one-third of the force, had disappeared from the training centers in France. Along with the weapons supplied by France, the Ukrainian military was also supposed to provide the brigade with special drones and other advanced weaponry, yet these were never delivered. Many soldiers complained from the outset when the unit was deployed to the front lines without drones or GPS systems. On the very first night, several soldiers fled. War reporters began documenting these incidents in their logs. By January, the world learned the shocking news. The once celebrated 155th Mechanized Brigade was effectively useless. In response, Ukraine hastily redistributed the multi-million-dollar French weapons among other brigades. The remaining mechanized units were reorganized into different formations according to a complex military formula. The Anne of Kiev Brigade was entirely dismantled. The Ukrainian Military High Command admitted there had been serious mismanagement. According to The Guardian, the actual number of deserters is much higher than publicly acknowledged, and officials are concealing the true figures. Deserters argue that no one can fight for months without proper rest, and this problem is not limited to the 155th Brigade alone. One Ukrainian sniper, who spent months on the front lines, has since fled and now runs an auto repair shop. Despite being a military fugitive, he openly operates his business without fear of capture. He has even offered to repair military vehicles free of charge, but refuses to return to combat. He remarked, "People used to embrace soldiers when they saw them walking through Ukrainian villages in uniform. But now, civilians fear them, worried they have come to recruit them." With this level of readiness and morale, Ukrainian forces have been fighting the Russian superpower army for the past 3 years. Despite the deserters, many soldiers refuse to surrender to the Russians under any circumstances. Currently, the Russia-Ukraine war spans 6 active fronts along a 1,000-kilometer front line. For the first time in this war, an entire brigade, the 5th Assault Brigade, has been formed specifically to conduct attacks using small, AI-powered machine gun robots. This type of warfare is now operational in the Donetsk region. These toy-sized robots, equipped with machine guns and tall tires, are designed to cross obstacles with ease. They can navigate roadside Russian mines as their operators, using remote cameras, control them from hidden operation rooms far away. Almost like playing a video game, these AI-powered robots can detect Russian soldiers in ambush and launch precise attacks from a distance. Due to their cost-effectiveness, Ukraine is producing them in large quantities. One of the key advantages of these small machine gun robots is their ability to operate in harsh weather conditions, including snow and swamps. However, they also have a major weakness. Their operational range is limited, as their signals break after a few hundred meters. Additionally, Russian electronic jammers disrupt their functionality. To overcome this issue, Ukrainian engineers integrated the robots with military drones. Since drones can fly long distances, they allow this robotic brigade to penetrate deep into enemy lines. Videos and reports from the Ukrainian army indicate that these weapons have inflicted heavy casualties on Russian forces, particularly in Kharkiv and Kursk. As a result, the Russian army is now unable to move its tanks freely during the daytime. Unlike before, Russian forces can no longer advance confidently into Ukrainian territory, especially in Donetsk and Kharkiv. Instead, they now travel mostly at night, using extensive cover and concealment. Meanwhile, Ukraine faces a growing threat from undetectable mini-drones, smaller than Russian glide bombs. These drones have become a major concern, as 27% of civilian deaths in January were caused by them. The high desertion rate among Ukrainian forces and their slow progress indicate that they have no effective response to Russia's military machine. Since 2014, Ukraine has lost 18% of its territory. Ukraine is relying on the West, either to fight on its behalf or to supply it with enough weapons to prevent Russia from advancing further. With both options failing, Ukraine has shifted its focus to holding on to as much Western Russian territory in Kursk region as possible to compensate for its own territorial losses. Recently, Ukrainian President Zelensky hinted at a possible land swap with Russia in an interview. He suggested that Ukrainian forces might withdraw from the Russian Kursk region in exchange for regaining some lost Ukrainian land. Currently, this is the sixth and final front where the most intense battles are taking place. Meanwhile, the U.S. appears to be signaling a shift in its approach, aiming to minimize further financial and military aid to Ukraine. A major indication of this was U.S. strength. President Donald Trump's 90-minute-long conversation with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Trump did not consult NATO, European allies, or even Ukrainian President Zelensky before making this call. It was his first direct discussion with Putin regarding the war. Following the call, Trump ordered the immediate start of negotiations to bring the war in Ukraine to an end. Only after this did he speak with his ally, Ukrainian President Zelensky. Reports on the call's duration vary. Some say it lasted 9 minutes, while others claim it was 60 minutes. Regardless, the contrast in attention given to Putin versus Zelensky was a clear embarrassment for Ukraine. The next day, Zelensky admitted to reporters that he felt bad about the conversation and did not like how it played out. By prioritizing a discussion with Putin first, Trump made it clear that he views Ukraine as a junior partner in this conflict. It also suggests that he believes whatever agreement he and Putin reach will ultimately dictate Ukraine's fate. For Zelensky and his military, nothing could be more demoralizing. At what point does a minor quarrel escalate into a fight and then spiral into a full-scale war? And how long it will last is beyond anyone's control. Currently, 56 active conflicts are raging worldwide. More than 90 countries are directly involved in these conflicts in one way or another. Among them, the wars between Russia and Ukraine and Israel and Gaza are the most significant. Meanwhile, multi-front civil wars continue in Sudan, Burma, and Ethiopia. Countless lives are being lost every day. It's worth remembering that in 2019, the Israel-Gaza conflict existed but wasn't as intense. 6 years ago, the Russia-Ukraine and Ethiopia conflicts were not as severe. This shows that the sooner conflicts are resolved, the better it is for humanity. Otherwise, this fire could engulf the entire world. Click on the right to watch the Gaza ceasefire, and on the left to explore the German economic collapse.